welcome back to my channel. I finally got a new ring light, so hopefully I'm playing around with it right now, and I'm hoping that the lighting isn't too bright or too dark. I don't know, you guys will have to let me know in the comments below. But today I thought I would I'm so ready for summer, you guys. So ready for summer. I am sick of winter. Like, we just had an ice storm. And here in the South, that's like a huge deal. And basically all the ice is now melting off the trees. And I'm like, I am so ready for summer. I'm ready to wear shorts and sandals and have, my hair in a ponytail and just be sweating. And it's like closer to fall, so we can start finding Halloween stuff. Like, I am just ready for summer. So what I thought I would do is a Summerween kind of makeup inspired look and tell you guys about literally the worst water park in American history. Honestly, this water park is spooky in itself, and it's spooky that it was ever a thing. If you guys have never heard of this, oh my gosh, I have done so much research. I was so intrigued by this, and I was like, I might as well just make a video because I've been so interested in it. Basically, I have countless YouTube videos, podcasts, articles, just for fun, just because I really enjoyed it. But I wanted to share it with you guys because I was like, well, they kind of, jump into summer a little bit with something kind of spooky and crazy and a Summerween makeup look, and just kind of have fun. I thought about doing these videos again because this is what I started doing on my YouTube channel. I thought about doing like abandoned buildings or like insane asylums back in the day. I don't know, you guys will have to let me know how you like this, but honestly, this is just for fun. Today we are talking about Action Park, and this is also known as Accident Park. It was founded, or I guess started, whatever you want to say, by a guy named Gene Mulvihill, and this guy is a very slimy guy. He didn't care about people's safety. He didn't care about any of that. Honestly, he didn't care about people's safety, didn't care about people's well-being. He wanted everyone to be in charge of their own ride and own experience. And that's what he believed in. He was like, you know what, screw Disneyland. Like, let's have everyone just be in charge of their own ride, because that's a great idea, right? And can I just say, you guys, I hate water parks, okay? That's what we're talking about today. And I have had a bad experience with water parks. When I was little, I was probably like 4 or 5. I went to the water park with one of my friends, and you guys know I'm like pale as F. So her mom coated me in sunscreen, and when I went under one of the little shower, things for, the fun, I don't even know what they're called, but they're for fun, whatever. The sunscreen got in my eyes. I cried so much that they took me home, and I have never been to a water park since. I'm also a germaphobe, so water parks really gross me out. Just the thought of sharing water with other people. I know they clean it, okay, I know, but to me, it is just very no offense if you like water parks, but this is just my opinion. It's just really gross. You're in the same pool as other people who are probably peeing, who had bloody cuts, and now there's a Band-Aid floating in the water. It's just really nasty to me. I'm just First ride we are gonna talk about is the Alpine Slide. And this thing was made out of concrete and fiberglass. Basically, this reminds me if you had a little toboggan. That's kind of what this ride reminds me of. But basically, it's a slide. You're going down, you take a ski lift up, and you have a little sled, and you get on your little sled, and there's 2 speeds and a brake. So it's either really, really fast or really, really slow. Those are the only 2 speeds, and they have sharp turns and curves. And of course, being on a concrete slide, people would get scratches and scabs because obviously, you know, if you take a sharp turn, you're going to be hitting the concrete and you're going to be getting bruises and cuts. So this does not sound like a great time to me, even if this was safe. Like, I don't do roller coasters. I don't do anything that seems like remotely unsafe. Like, I have always hated roller coasters, like Space Mountain at Disneyland, Disney World. Like, I almost cried going on that. Like, it's just an awful experience. This ride was described by a previous visitor of Action Park as, and I quote, essentially a giant track to rip people's skin off that was disguised as a kid's ride. And I do agree with that. It looks like it's a freaking kids ride. It looks like it's so much fun, and I'm sure if you didn't get all banged up it would be fun, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine being on that. Unfortunately, there was an employee who worked at Action Park and he went on this alpine slide, and he was 19 years old and his name was George Larson. A week before the incident I'm about to tell you happened, there are rocks by the alpine slide. And they talked about removing them, but they just, I guess, never got around to it. So when this kid went down the slide, 19-year-old George, he basically, the brake on his little sled was broken. Due to this, you know, of course, going around a sharp turn, you can't really control anything. He went off the track, his head hit a rock, he went into a coma and then like died, I think like a week or two later. Of course, his family was very upset about this. I mean, I can't imagine like having your kid, especially where they work, and then that kills them. It's like so neglectful on Action Park's side. And this park also was run by teenagers. And from what I was also reading was that if people got mad, like people would try to enforce, I think like safety regulations, and then some people would get mad. And then like, of course, being a teenager, like if you ever remember being a teen and having your first job and like the first time someone gets mad at you, you're like, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sure it was similar to that, and so people didn't listen, and I just don't think they had many safety rules posted. But basically his family only got $100,000 from his death, which it's like, that seems like a lot of money, but for a ride that killed someone you love, that no amount of money is gonna ever bring them back. But just the fact that it was owing $100,000 and nothing happened, like the ride, the park, everything was still in place and fine, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And this did make the news, so what kind of shocks me is that people kept going to this park. Like, if I don't know, see, this is why when I was a kid I used to go to fairs all the time, and thinking back on it, I'm like, those rides were put together, taken apart, put together, taken apart. And honestly, it's terrifying because, again, a lot of these rides are run by teenagers, and like something bad really could have happened. And I'm pretty sure all of the ride operators were on drugs from what I remember. So I can only imagine during this time, and this was before my time, okay? So I can only imagine. Now, between 1984 and 1985, 14 fractures and 26 head injuries were reported. And it is said that on busy days, there would be so many ambulances coming and taking people. They were just like, oh my gosh, like we can't keep coming down here and taking people, that they would just always have an ambulance on site. And on a busy day, they would take anywhere from between 5 to 10 people to the hospital every single day. So as I kept looking into more attractions, because this place was actually pretty big, there were so many different rides and attractions, and honestly, I'm not even going to be able to cover them, all of them in this entire video, all the deaths and injuries, because there are so many that you guys would probably be sitting here for over an hour. If you want to research this or listen to a podcast, I highly recommend it because it's just the amount of injuries, deaths, it's insane. At first I saw this, I was like, oh, they have a wave pool. Okay, this can't be bad, right? It's just a wave pool. Like, it's like going to the beach. It can't be bad. It's probably fun. It looks like it's the least dangerous thing. I was like, if I went here, this is probably the ride I would have gone on because it looks the least dangerous. Well, leave it to Action Park to find a way to hurt people through a freaking wave pool. I mean, like, I know freak accidents can happen anywhere, okay? Like Disney, they have had their fair share of deaths and accidents. And it just happens. I mean, you look at any fair, anything like that, but this is just absolutely disgusting and it makes me want to vomit just talking about it. So the wave pool, also known as the grave pool, would have waves that would go up to over 3.5 feet tall. It was said to be very deep in this pool. And leave it to Action Park to, again, they don't really care about anything. So this pool was filled with blood, sunscreen, and human waste. Just take that in for a minute, okay? You're swimming in a pool of all this stuff. And apparently the water was so like murky and like no one could see at the bottom that the lifeguard wasn't able to see like people in the pool because it was so deep and the water was so murky and they couldn't see people. So they would have to like drain the pool to make sure that like no one drowned that they couldn't see. I'm like, this is so flippin' disgusting. Like, did anyone not get like hepatitis in this pool? Like, I don't understand how. And if you saw that the water was like this, why would you want to go in it? I don't know. I guess this was back in the 80s and, you know, since we've had COVID and all that, we're kind of like more aware of germs and, okay, you know, on Halloween time, we probably shouldn't be bobbing for apples. But I guess back then it didn't really matter. I don't know. I just think that is so disgusting and I would never get in a pool if I couldn't like see clear water. 1982, a 15-year-old actually ended up drowning in this pool. His name was George Lopez. And yeah, he ended up drowning in this wave pool. And 5 years later, another guy drowned. And he was actually an adult and he drowned in this pool. And his name was Gregory Grandchamps. So even something that seems like the safest ride in Action Park was not even safe. I cannot do my eyeliner and talk at the same time. I have to be like so focused when I do it. So anyway, next ride or attraction or death trap, whatever you want to call it. Honestly, it's like, how is this real? How is this real, especially in this time period? I don't understand. It is called the Cannonball Loop. And this was, no joke, designed on a napkin. Like, that is how little that this guy, Gene, really cared about people's safety and the structure of his rides and what could happen. So, yeah. So basically, of course, I'm going to show you guys a picture of it. It was a 360-degree angle loop slide. And basically, you'd go down it, you'd loop, and then you would like go out into like this little like pool of water. So he would throw test dummies down there, okay? So you think, okay, the test dummies are coming out like all banged up and bad, like maybe we should keep working on this and make it better. No. This guy was like, you know what? Maybe it's just the dummies. I'm gonna go and pay my teenage employees $100 if they will go and try this ride. I'm sorry. if dummies are going down it and they're coming out bad, it's not going to be any different with the real person. In fact, it's probably going to be even worse. So, unfortunately, some of these teenagers were willing to do this because it was $100, and when you're a teenager, $100 really does seem like a lot of money. And so some of them would go down this ride. Of course, they would end up with, bruises and cuts, and they didn't understand why some people were coming out with like bad cuts. They're like, what is going on? So apparently people's teeth were getting stuck inside of this slide. So when people would go around, they were getting scraped by people's teeth. Also keep in mind, there was no padding on the slide at all. It closed after only one summer, so if that tells you anything, it did not last at all. Some people who actually went down the slide would, because of gravity, would get stuck like in the loop, like they would just like fall, and then they would get stuck and they were like, oh my gosh, like how do I like get out of here, and be all like freaked out. So this ride did not last long at all, and honestly, oh my gosh, I can't imagine like dangling that money in front of like susceptible like teenagers who need money, and you're willing to do it, and you know that they're probably gonna get hurt. Like, I don't know. This guy is just like, what is your problem, dude? What is your problem? So you're probably thinking to yourself, why aren't people suing this guy? Like, how has this park not been closed down yet? There's deaths been happening. There's people getting injured. How has this park stayed open? Well, Gene created his own insurance company. It's like, what? And basically it would make it harder basically for people to sue him. And he basically would drag out any case. So if someone did take him to court, he would drag it out for as long as he could, and he didn't pay up unless the police came like knocking on his door and was like, hey, you have this amount to pay or you're going to jail or whatever. And so then that's what he would do. And this is how like a lot of injuries didn't get reported because they never reported it unless they were taken by an ambulance. And so many people, of course, who were at the park had to go and get like first aid because they were getting cut up. And I don't know, it just seems like somebody would have been like, it just seems like popularity of this park would have died. But I guess since it was like the first real water park in the US, and it was something that like the family could enjoy and kids could have fun doing, I'm sure some people just didn't care, and they were like, well, it hasn't happened to us, so let's just keep going. If you want to know how many lawsuits were against this park, it was over 100. Over 100 lawsuits were against this guy, and for some reason he managed to get his little sneaky snake body way out of pretty much all of them. I mean, there really wasn't, the worst part was he would just have to pay like the families, and then that was it. Like, he never really did change anything. After hundreds of injuries happened and 6 deaths were recorded, the park finally closed in 1996, which I'm sure you're like, oh my gosh, how did this not happen sooner? But yeah, the park finally did close. In 1998, the park was actually reopened under the name Mountain Creek, and a different person did buy the park and decided to go ahead and remove all of the previous rides. They just wanted to revamp the park, redo everything, and give it a new name, get rid of Action Park, because people were like, Accident Park, Class Action Park. They owned it until 2010 when Gene decided to get a group of people and was like, hey, let's buy this park back. And so that's unfortunately exactly what happened. In 2012, Gene did pass away, which some people were very happy about. And his son actually ended up taking it over in 2014, giving the name pretty much getting the name Action Park back. And I'm like, why? And I guess it's like his dad's legacy, but I'm still just like, no, it needs to die. It's not dying. Just in case your head wasn't spinning already, in 2015, a different family bought the park, revamped it, changed the name back to Mountain Creek. In 2018, which I found was so interesting, a former Action Park employee who worked there as a teenager decided that he wanted to buy the park back. And it's still under the name Mountain Creek today, and this happened in 2018, if I didn't already say that. Epileptic brain, sorry. If you look up Action Park, it'll show it as closed, but if you look up Mountain Creek Park, it is still open today. And honestly, I thought they removed all the like original rides, and I guess they like removed the original like setup, but you guys, they still have the wave pool, they still have the alpine slide, and they still have the cannonball loop, which it just terrifies me like looking at these pictures. Like the wave pool, I'm sure they've made all of these like so much safer, but it's still just like, why would you not get like new rides? Like I understand the land is probably good for a water park, but why wouldn't you want to get all new like rides? The alpine slide definitely does look safer. It looks like it's actually like on a railing and that there's seat belts. The cannonball loop definitely looks like it was built better and that it's not at the angle that it was. So I'm sure it's a little safer. I'm sure there's padding, and I'm sure the wave pool isn't as deep as it was. And especially now and all the accidents that have happened at like water parks and just, you know, fairs and stuff like that, I'm sure it is so much stricter on rules and regulations and what you have to have now and what you don't have to have. So that is gonna do it for today's video on Action Park. I wish I could have ended this video saying it is abandoned now, it's not a thing anymore, but unfortunately people are still going, and part of me wants to go to be like, I just want to see the setup. Like I'm not gonna go and ride anything, even though like I just said, I'm sure it's completely fine and safe now, but it's just still so eerie knowing that like so many deaths happen there and injuries, and like the same place has opened and all the same stuff is there. It's just kind of more revamped. And I'm sure that does have to do with the former Action Park employee. I'm sure if he couldn't have that name back or wanted that name back, I'm sure he still kind of wanted some of the old park that he once had, if that makes any sense. I haven't heard anything with Mountain Creek that people are getting hurt or banged up, but yeah, it's open today, just under a new name. So if you wanna go, let me know, or if you have been, or if you did go to Action Park at some point, let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you want me to do more of these videos, just comment down below or give this video a like. If you haven't subscribed already and you want to be part of the spooky society, ooh, that's what we should call ourselves, the spooky society, then just hit that subscribe button and make sure to turn on your notifications. That way you'll be notified every time I post a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, stay spooky. Bye guys.